29 years ago, Barcelona were dismantled 4-0 at the Carranza. Ronald Koeman took part in that one too, but back then, Johan Cruyff and his dream team had already captured the Liga title. In terms of what this result meant, this 2-1 loss could go down as way worse. I think there were mistakes from Ronald Koeman in the starting lineup to begin with. He went a little too conservative against a team that could beat you by defending tight, compact, but also knew how to get out on the counterattack, all of which we saw this season. And Cádiz have shown so far this year that they've got more fight, desire, and are better organized than other teams who might just roll over for Barcelona. To start this match, Cádiz showed you exactly what they were going to do in defense. They were attacking in a 4-4-2 and defending in a 4-5-1, with Alex Fernandez dropping into the middle and to help with those counterattacks and build-up. So Barcelona were attempting the early long balls to get in behind the Cádiz defense, and you saw that Antoine Griezmann was lively to start, which is another good sign that he was coming off a confident midweek performance. But unfortunately, anything that Koeman would have had planned for the entire 90 minutes was flipped on its head when Barca conceded in the 8th minute. It was a near-post flick-on by Fali, more on him in a second, and Mingueza in his 4th straight start, where before this match he had 11 goals scored when he was on the pitch, 0 conceded for the first team, and then it all came crashing down, almost scores an own goal with Mauro and Jimenez lurking. Mingueza was shoved prior to the ball being delivered. It's 50-50 if that's going to be called. Tries to get himself back up and heads it goalward, I guess thinking that he was wide of the net, but Jimenez finishes and puts it over the line, and Barca are down 1-0, and now this match, especially with Cádiz at home at the Carranza, just changes its disposition. In that first half, nothing was working. It might have been 80% possession, and it might have been 6-1 total shots. I liked Griezmann's movement. It was fine. The connections, though, were the key. Messi and Busquets looked like a goal might have happened from that. There was De Jong and no one. There really was no connections coming from the Dutch midfielder. And then Coutinho and no one as well. It just wasn't working with the 3 big figureheads of that attack in Messi, Griezmann, and Coutinho. And Cádiz, I think they've studied the tape and they knew exactly how to shut down the space that those 3 like to occupy together. But what Koeman needed to do, other than getting his starting lineup correct from the first whistle, was to make changes at halftime. For me, Coutinho and De Jong should have been the 2 to come off. The ball was moving so much slower against Cádiz than it did against Ferencváros. And it's not like Cádiz was doing anything that was that complicated. They were just closing down the spaces and making sure that they were throwing their bodies at any cross coming in from Alba and Dest and forcing and funneling it out to the flanks, knowing that Coutinho with his long shots wasn't really going to do much. You could block those. If you could command that line of confrontation where Griezmann and Braithwaite were occupying, then Cádiz knew that they could win this match, and at least they won that first half. So I was pretty close with the Coutinho and De Jong idea because De Jong does get out of midfield. He moves back to center back. Mingueza comes off. And again, a sad story for him because you hope that this isn't the final straw for him with Ronald Araujo potentially ready to come back in the next match. It would be a shame to see that Mingueza, for all the good that he did in these 3 matches, people singing his praises, articles written, that 1 own goal could be the very end to him just because of rotations. And Coutinho, as I had said, deserved to come off, just couldn't find the space, wasn't working well today. And Pedri and Dembélé did bring life into that match. Within 3 minutes, Griezmann creates the overload on the left with Alba and Dembélé, and they create a chance for Braithwaite. And Pedri was important in that second half, just buzzing around. It seemed to me that even winning second balls in a way that Coutinho wasn't doing. And for Coutinho, it has to be one of these watershed moments where we've been arguing about getting Riqui Puig playing time, and you saw in that second half that he wasn't going to be coming on. But if I'm Coutinho, I have to look in the mirror after a match like this and say, I have to outplay an 18-year-old. I cannot have him come in and just be better than me. And it doesn't have to be personal, but that's competition within a squad. But Coutinho, I think this match is going to put him right back in that firing line for media to ask questions of his performance this season. The narrative, at least for Barcelona, could have changed quickly as Alba was able to get the equalizing goal. They did mark it as an own goal for Alcala, but I think this is almost a reward for Barcelona. As I said, it's not that they were short on chances. By that point, when that ball goes in for the equalizer, the shots were 10-1 in favor of Barcelona, continuing at about 80% possession. So it was Busquets to Messi, who, as I said, had a good combination today. Then Messi just rolling it to Alba as the defense tried to suffocate in upon the Argentine, and Alba was able to get the fortunate deflection 1-1. Cádiz did answer, though, in terms of energy, forcing Lenglet to pick up the yellow. And this is where I want to speak to the fine performances that we saw from Fali, Alberto Pereira, and Bobby Atacane off the bench. But he's found a way, now being on loan for Lazio, and he helped close out that match. Fali and Alberto Pereira, who both spent time with Barcelona B, and weren't really impressive in their time at Barcelona B. They were actually older signings, and that was actually two players that were examples when Francesa and I used to complain back in the day when Barca B would bring in players in their early to mid-20s to try to add some quote-unquote experience. Well, they were not as good for Barca B as they were for Cádiz today, and that is a big credit to the job that Alvaro Silveira is doing in the southwest part of Spain. But as good as the former Barca B men were, Barca lost this match because of self-inflicted wounds. The second goal for Cádiz came. Negredo, returning from injury sooner than expected, had just come on as a sub into the match before Alba with a terrible throw-in. But Lenglet misplays it, and then Ter Stegen, caught between two minds of clearing it and just trying to get something on it, also whiffs on the ball. De Jong then misses the tackle. Not much that De Jong could have done. So easy for Negredo, his third goal of the year. So that, on that play, mistake by Alba, bigger mistake by Lenglet, arguably the same or bigger mistake by Ter Stegen, and then De Jong, not much he could have done. That's now against Alaves, Atletico, and Cádiz. Awful errors, and you're talking about points in the league table that Barca have dropped because of self-inflicted wounds. And this tells you the team that they are. They are talented enough to win every match. Obviously, the talent is up and down. That's why when you look at this team on paper, we can argue that it might be a throwout year, but it's because on paper, they should be winning, and yet everything seems to not be working. It's self-inflicted. So now Barca pushing for their second equalizer. They almost get it. Dest so close to the second equalizer off the best pass of the match from Busquets. Then the 77th minute, Trincao and Pjanic on for Dest and Busquets. I want to say Dest, as I said, not a bad showing from him at all. I think he was fine and fit. And Ray Hudson had a point on the BN Sports broadcast that Dest, he said that Dest defends better than Sergio Roberto. I'm not too sure about that, but if Ray Hudson's going to say that Dest can defend as well as Sergio Roberto, then when Sergio Roberto is healthy enough to come back, I think Dest should be the starter and Roberto should be the backup. Because if that's the argument for Roberto, other than he just understands the midfield and understands how to play for Barcelona better than Dest does, and he's a fourth captain, that's not a very good argument for a team that can't seem to get any results. To me, it appears already that Dest, even with Roberto healthy, is the best answer to Barca putting the ball in the back of the net. Busquets is the one that I think is quite divisive and the one that you might let me have it in the comments below. But Busquets has not had a good season. Full stop. He hasn't been himself. Clearly, whether he's showing signs of age or he's just playing too much football. He's a step slower, it's not working, and he did make some errors in that first half, even in the second, and cutting out counterattacks. He just doesn't do that well anymore. He's not in the right positions, and he's a bit slow. It also doesn't help that in front of him, when you have Coutinho and Griezmann and Messi, the space for Barca to try to defend and get into that press is all out of whack, because who's to tell where those three are going to be when the ball is turned over, and Busquets is certainly the one who's getting all the attention for when things go wrong in those circumstances. I'm not absolving Busquets of any of the blame that he's had in his performances this season, but this showing today against Cádiz wasn't the same thing. His connection with Messi was clicking today, and he was always in the right spots offensively, and in that second half, when he came out, I felt like he was going to have that, we'll call it the hockey assist or the MLS assist, and I thought Busquets did his job just fine today. If Barcelona don't concede two very poor goals, I would argue that we would say this is one of Busquets' best performances of the season, and he wasn't involved in either of those goals. But I think it's hard to argue that we can't just keep that idea even in a loss. Barcelona had won 3 prior to this one, so I'm not going to let one match change the entire narrative, but I will throw out one stat, courtesy of Dermot Corrigan from The Athletic in the UK. Messi now scored in 2 of his last 16 away games in the Liga, the 4th in a 4-0 against Mallorca, and 2 against Alaves on the last day of the season when Real Madrid were already crowned champions. So worrying form from Messi on the road. Messi from this match, in terms of key passes, in terms of engagement, in terms of touches, in terms of defending on the press, it was all there for me. So while he didn't put the ball in the back of the net, I continue to not be afraid, because when you look at his heat maps, he's deeper than he's been in quite some time. And so to expect him to get the ball in the net, especially when he's not clicking with Griezmann and Coutinho, that's hard to imagine that that's going to change unless the team, once again, fundamentally changes. So as we're hitting the panic button on Barcelona once again, after, as I said, 3 straight clean sheets in 3 straight victories, Cádiz are a good squad, and I do want to tip my hat to them. Once again, the idea that Barcelona are deserving to win these matches against teams that have showed you in the Liga this season. I've watched Cádiz now on 4 occasions, and they're a much better team than a promoted side should be expected to be. Alvaro Carrera has been playing very well, and they've taken 6 points off Real Madrid and Barcelona already this season. And I don't care if you say, well, it's not the normal Barca and it's not the normal Real Madrid. Those are still huge games for these players that are obviously, I think, going to be quite nervous when heading into those matchups with those big giants. So a tip of my hat to them for taking care of business against the two giants in the Liga. And they find themselves, that being Cádiz, in 5th place in the table right now, and they deserve to be in that spot. For Barcelona, though, they're in 7th, 6 points behind Villarreal for a Champions League spot. And as Frances said on the podcast last week, I don't think we're too worried about Barcelona missing out on Champions League eventually. But Atletico Madrid, Real Sociedad, Real Madrid, Villarreal, Cádiz, Sevilla, they have all been much better than Barcelona this season. So if Barca are going to jump up into one of those Champions League spots, they're going to have to be better than somebody ahead of them in the second half of the season, because that has not been the case in the first half. So unfortunately, a lot of negativity today, but Barca are going to have to put this one behind them because it's Juventus already on Tuesday on short rest. I expect plenty of rest, even though arguably this is for the first spot in the group. I think the focus still needs to be on putting your best players, and I don't know who those are, but putting your best players out on the weekends for La Liga action. Prior to that match, though, Frances and I will have this weekly pod, and make sure you also come back here for the match review against Juventus. And as always, until next time, Forza Barca.